vote today does not in any way diminish the United States' steadfast and unparalleled commitment to the security of Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East. We would not have let this resolution pass had it not also addressed counterproductive actions by the Palestinians.
That is our ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, today after the abstention from the vote. Let's bring in our panel, Jonah Goldberg, senior editor at National Review, Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist, Charles Lane, opinion writer for The Washington Post, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. And to anyone who thought it was going to be a quiet holiday week of news, it's definitely not been the case. Jonah, what do you make of this? Because what Ambassador Power said is this doesn't diminish the U.S. Steadfast and unparalleled commitment to the security of Israel. That's not how Israel's interpreting this.
That's not how basically any observer is interpreting this. This is like me punching someone in the face. It's me saying I'm not punching you in the face. Of course, this diminishes America's steadfast support for Israel. What I think is the most remarkable thing about this is that this is to no productive end. We've spent 8 years listening to a lot of supporters of Israel, a lot of liberal Jewish supporters of Israel, insist that Barack Obama is unparalleled in his support for Israel. And he's going out the door, flipping a middle finger to Israel for no apparent purpose. And if you listen to Ben Rhodes, you will listen in vain for a coherent answer to why they're doing this. And I think what this does is reveal that all along the rhetoric and posturing towards Israel concealed where their emotional heart is, which is they've always thought this was about the settlements, and this is a way to, and they held off doing this earlier because they knew it would hurt Hillary Clinton. Now that Hillary's gone, they're doing it simply out of spite and out of a sense of sort of emotional commitment to screwing Israel.
Yeah, and to be clear, we are one of the few who had veto power over this, so it never went anywhere at all, and the U.S. Affirmatively chose not to do that. We do have a little bit of audio from the phone call with Ben Rhodes this afternoon explaining what had happened and why. Here's a bit of that.
The Israeli government wants the conversation to be about anything other than the settlement activity. We've been warning President Obama and Secretary Kerry publicly and privately for years that the trend line of settlement construction and settlement activity was just increasing Israel's international isolation.
And while a lot of people would argue this resolution also isolates Israel, I mean, moves to that end.
Yes, and this, if anything, gives false hope to Palestinians. This doesn't actually change our policy. It won't change in a few weeks. We'll have a return to what our position of strong support of Israel has been for 40 years. But it'll give false hope to Palestinians. They will think that this gives them claim to something. It could lead to more violence. And showing this kind of moral cowardice and abstaining on this vote, not supporting this democracy, is a perfect coda to 8 years of foreign policy bungling and impotence.
Well, we got this tweet, of course, today, Chuck. I know you're not surprised. There is a tweet from Donald Trump saying, as to the UN, things will be different after January 20th. It's something that Israeli leaders are embracing and celebrating and noting in all their reactions to this vote today.
Well, yeah, I mean, just to pick up on a couple of the points, this does change something real. It changes international law. Security Council resolutions are international law, and that's a tremendous weapon now in diplomacy that the Palestinians can wield.
But apparently, my understanding, unless I'm getting this wrong, is that there are no sanctions that would be imposed on Israel.
No, but the declaration of what's legal and illegal in the name of the Security Council is extremely important for propaganda purposes, for legitimizing people who might try to make private sanctions like the boycott, divest movement.
Also, the International Criminal Court can play into this too.
But just to pick up on the point about what I think is fascinating in terms of the domestic politics of this, just as you said, the Israelis are now kind of openly placing their hopes in a Republican president coming in and crying betrayal at a Democratic president. We have come a long way in this country from the time when support for Israel was a bipartisan, almost unquestioned bipartisan thing. And now you are seeing not just a split between the parties, but you will soon see a split within the Democratic Party that will be provoked by this step, because President Obama has thrown, and John Kerry have thrown their weight behind the voices that have been insisting for a long time within the Democratic Party for a tougher, quote-unquote, policy on Israel that will put a lot of pressure on the pro-Israel forces within the Democratic Party, some of whom have been heard from such as Chuck Schumer, Ron Wyden, and Sherrod Brown in the Senate today.
And we just got something in from Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, formerly of the DNC, heading up the DNC. She said, I condemn the strongest of terms the United Nations Security Council's passage of what she calls this one-sided anti-Israel resolution, as well as the United States' reckless abstention. So bipartisan condemnation, Charles.
What happened today is that the United States joined the jackals at the UN. That was a phrase used by Pat Moynihan, the great Democratic senator, the former U.S. ambassador, who spoke for the United States standing up in the UN and to resist this kind of disgrace. To give you an idea of how appalling this resolution is, it declares that any Jew who lives in the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem, the Jewish quarter inhabited for 1,000 years, is illegal, breaking international law, essentially an outlaw, can be hauled into the International Criminal Court or into national courts in Europe, which is one of the consequences. The Jewish quarter has been populated by Jews for 1,000 years. In the War of Independence in 1948, the Arabs invaded Israel to wipe it out. They did not succeed, but the Arab Legion succeeded in conquering the Jewish quarter. They expelled all the Jews. They destroyed all the synagogues and all the homes. And for 19 years, no Jew could go there. The Israelis got it back in the Six-Day War, and now it's declared that this is not Jewish territory. Remember, it's called the Jewish quarter, but it belongs to other people, and any Jew who lives there is an outlaw. That's exactly what we supported. The resolution is explicit in saying settlements in the occupied territories and in East Jerusalem.
It does. But what my question is, why now? I mean, the Obama administration is about to leave. And
yes, because he didn't.
But there's been this very tenuous public cooperation between Obama and Netanyahu, although we always hear behind the scenes they don't like each other personally, or that there are issues that they disagree on. But publicly, they've stayed united. So why now, with 3.5 weeks to go, do you blow that up?
In 2012, running for re-election, Obama spoke at the meeting of AIPAC, the big Jewish lobby, and he said, is there any doubt that I have Israel's back? That's why he didn't want to do it while he was in office. That's why he didn't want to do it in 2016, so it would injure Hillary and show to particularly American Jews who tend to be Democratic that it was all a farce. He does it on the way out, and that's part of why it's so disgraceful. He hid it until there'd be no consequence, and now he's out the door and the damage is done for years. That resolution cannot be undone.
Well, let me bring up a real quick point, and then Joan, I want to get to you. I talked with Senator Graham today, who chairs the subcommittee that controls UN funding, and he was, talking very tough about he's going to do everything he can to block their funding unless this is rolled back or use it as some kind of leverage.
Yeah, I think that points to an important dynamic. This is going to set off a war between Congress and the United Nations that's going to have ramifications for a long time to come. But I also say there's a bizarre irony to this, in that everyone tells us that Bibi Netanyahu and Barack Obama don't like each other. This is a gift to Bibi Netanyahu. It's terrible for Israel. But what this does is it allows Bibi Netanyahu to say persuasively, even to his domestic critics, look, I've been telling you for 8 years, I haven't ruined the relationship with America. It's all because of Obama. And now Obama shows his true colors, and Bibi can say, look, I was right.
Well, and he'll have some backing now and help from Senator Graham and others. I mean, what do we make of this accusation by Senator Tom Cotton and others who have said to me, and probably to some of you too, that this was specifically orchestrated by President Obama and John Kerry?
Well, the Israelis have been saying that for some time, and they say this was all done behind their back, et cetera, et cetera.
But our own lawmakers
yeah, well,
the White House of doing it.
I'm not sure Tom Cotton was privy to all these conversations. I'm sure he's been briefed by sources in Israel who've been telling that to everyone. I must say I'm struck by the disconnect here. Look what's going on in the Middle East. 500,000 people have been slaughtered in Syria. You have war all over Yemen. Iran is pursuing a nuclear weapon. And the issue that the United Nations Security Council is focused on here a couple days before Christmas and Hanukkah is this.
Is Jews living in the Jewish quarter. It tells you how perverse the UN is and why it's time we cut the cord and stop giving him any money.
Yeah, we'll see. If Senator Graham gets his way, that's what's going to happen.